You're listening to the Love Your Neighbor podcast.
Well, thank you for joining us. This season is brought to you by Brandon Wellness, and the Links podcast is the Love Your Neighbor podcast. And we have one of your neighbors, one of my neighbors, Casey Antillon. Yep. Casey, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, well, you're going to be great.
Thanks.
I mean, we were just noticing, that I'm big on the outside. You're small on the outside, but you have an enormous personality and an enormous story to tell. So I can't wait to get into that. Many people, of course, that are watching this probably know you, but there are, so many people are new to our community. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but
and especially, part of my story is I've been born and raised here. And so then now there's so many more people that it's doubled in size, and we're constantly having new people at our church, or I'm meeting new people that it's like, I've never even known you and you've been here for how many years? And so it's,
So you're saying you're having to adjust.
100%. 100%.
Oh my goodness. That must be exhausting.
I mean, it is what it is. We're in the people business, so it is what it is, But
and you are literally in the people business. You guys are creating new people all the time.
Well, and actually, wait, are you talking about my kids?
Well, yeah. You and your husband are creating new people all the time.
All the time, and we're done. We've got 3 under 2. So
3 under 2.
3 under 2.
Sounds like a good start to me.
That wasn't necessarily the plan, but that's just, obviously you don't have that much control over it. But we have 3 under 2. Our oldest, Veda, is turning 2 on September 20th. And then we have twins, a boy and a girl, Judah and Isella, that are turning 6 months on the 24th. Mm-hmm. So, but we're done. But yes, we're creating lots of new people.
It's amazing. I was, the twins thing. Obviously, I'm a huge Twins fan. I've grown up watching the Twins.
Right.
But it's a little different, I've heard. So we have 2, but they were separated by 19 months. My wife cried both times.
Right?
Joy?
My husband and I have been talking, because obviously we wanted them kids close together. We didn't anticipate twins, obviously. And so when we were going into it, it was like, oh my gosh, we can't do this. Oh my gosh. And then now that we have the twins, you just learn a new rhythm and whatever. But we were having a discussion. It's like, now we're so glad we had twins. Which twin would we get rid of? What I mean? Mm-hmm. And we're like, we love them all. So yes, bring on the twins. We're done. But we're so thankful now that we have twins.
Well, it's kind of one's a spare, right? You have 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 legs, 2 feet. One's a spare. So
Yep.
That's not true, is it?
Depends who you ask. I'm just kidding.
Well, what a cool thing. And I'm just, so tell us a little bit about, you've got the twins, your husband, you're a pastor here in Brandon. Mm-hmm. Your husband's a business owner in Brandon. Take us back for those people that knew you when you were just a little kid.
Right.
Bring us up to speed from just, Casey kid to now Casey, mom, pastor, wife.
A lot. So again, I am a pastor, but I'm also a pastor's kid. And so my parents, 31 years ago, that's how old I am, 31 years ago, planted Brandon Valley Assembly of God. And it used to meet at the high school and all of that. So from when I was a baby, just in the car seat, a few months old, probably as old as my twins, I've been in Brandon. Did church here, went to school here, graduated from here, and then I went to the University Center for a year, and then after that I went to Minneapolis. And I went to a small Christian college up in Minneapolis, literally 3 or 4 blocks from where the Vikings play. So it was awesome. But I was up there and I worked there for a couple of years, and then 7 years, I just hit my 7th year back in Brandon. I moved back to work for my dad, which I said I would never do. I said no, because I was like, I don't want to be that girl that just comes back and works for her dad, got the easy job and whatever.
So just to get this straight, so the deal was then when you came back, he now works for you, correct?
Pretty much. Yes.
Okay, good,
yes.
good.
And yes, exactly.
That's how you worked that. I knew this was going to come out. Good.
Right? So 7 years ago, I came here and I actually said, I was single at the time and I moved here and I was like, all right, I made peace that I was moving back to my hometown, that I probably wasn't going to find anybody and I would be single for 10 to 15 years. And I made peace with it. And I was like, great, whatever. I'm just here to do ministry. Let's do this. So I moved in September, and then in October, I wanted to go and find some people my age outside of the church just to find some other people to hang out with. And I went to this life group that a guy named Noel led. I was like, what kind of name is Noel? Like, what is this? What? We met each other, and we both said, absolutely not. We said no. And then a month later, we ran into each other again, and it was completely the opposite. We've been together ever since. So we've been married it'll be 6 years in January. We have 3 kids under 2. I am the high school youth pastor at our church, and my husband, as of, I don't even know how many years now. Are we on our 4th year? We own Auto Body Specialists in Brandon, right next to Rowena, and he's a business owner.
Yeah.
And works on cars and does a phenomenal job. Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, what took more energy? Being married to Noel, just the two of you, or now having Noel and 3 kids? Which took more energy?
Oh, gosh.
Gotcha.
I love him. But if you know Noel, he is just all over the place. But
yeah,
people just
met.
love him. Yeah. I know. I know. He's
so
cool.
See, my whole thing is now I can kind of needle him a little bit because I've got him. He's not here. But he's going to hear this maybe.
Yes. Yes, he will.
He'll take time.
He better listen to it. But he has listened to several of your podcasts.
Oh.
He has listened to several of these. And he's like, oh, these are awesome. These are awesome. I love them. You're going to do great. I'm so glad you're doing this. So he was pumped.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, maybe this will help build a bridge. Maybe we can have him in here. That would be an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, well, enough about Noel. So, Brandon, you grew up in Brandon. So, I mean, now just to kind of come back, like you left, not necessarily planning to come back.
Oh, no.
Okay.
I thought I would come back after I was already married, was working up in Minneapolis. I loved Minneapolis. I loved it. The city, I worked north of the city. I thought maybe when I have kids to be closer to my parents. And I loved it. And then I'll never forget the moment that God called me here. And I just went, okay. But it was not my plan at all. But now, how everything's happened, being married to Noel, owning a business, having the kids, working at the church, like, I love it. Absolutely love it. But no, this was not my plan. That's usually how it works out, I feel like.
Yeah, I can second that motion. That's for sure.
Right?
Brandon was not my plan A either.
Yeah, I think you told me that.
I had no idea. I mean, now looking back, I go, well, anybody could see, well, I can see where you thought this would be a good, never thought about it. So, obviously you mentioned God's calling,
right.
But I mean, what's that been like for you now that you're back? I mean, that you're back in town, you're doing, you're in the family business a little bit here.
Right. A couple things when you said that, like, I mean, when I first moved back, it was a little weird and intimidating because sometimes you're like, oh gosh, are people going to remember you from high school? And it's not that I was horrible, but I mean, just sometimes the decisions or the things that you make, it's just, you're like, oh gosh, I don't want people to remember me necessarily for that. Like I'm more mature, more grown up, more whatever. And so there was some of that, like, okay, how are people going to think of me? And that's just an insecurity that whatever. Then there's some that it was like, okay, are people just going to think like I'm just this young girl again working and I'm in a leadership position. So is that going to be weird? But so at first it was a little weird. I knew God's calling, but it was a little, how do I navigate this? And then being my own person, but also being the pastor's daughter.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But now, I love it. Like I've found who I am for myself, for my own marriage, and people see me as my own person. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? And I found my stride. And so I love being back here. I love being back in Brandon. Now I'm seeing there's a lot of nostalgia in it, you know, or seeing different teachers or things like that. Yeah.
Who's it? And this is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Because I'm a first generation pastor.
Yeah.
My
I'm
boy,
fifth.
you're fifth generation.
generation
Okay.
pastor.
Okay. So yeah. So I have lots, and your dad and I have had multiple conversations about this and navigating that, because I don't know what it's like for my kids, you know, to be, and I don't use the term PK, but a lot of people do, and I get defensive right away.
Sure.
Like, what'd you call me? Like,
Right.
I mean, come on. Like, so, but I understand that's all they know. And I never knew it. I didn't grow up in that context. But I'm curious to know about a couple things. First of all, like, as a female in ministry, as a leader, because you're a high capacity visionary type leader, you charge the
Thank you.
You charge the gates, and I've watched you in action, and just from obviously, you know, seeing what you do and the impact you're making, it's so cool to watch.
Thank you.
Talk about that from the female side, because I think that's one of the things in our community and our culture right now that's getting kind of watered down, is like, you know, how do we look at females in leadership, and what has that been for you? You've got those gifts.
Such a great question. Such a great question.
I can't wait to hear the answer.
My mind's just going so many different things. I've actually been thinking about that recently too. I've actually been in a lot of church contexts, mission trips, different events that we've had here in different churches, and they look at Noel and I, and they go, wait, and like they talk to him like he's the pastor. And then Noel goes, oh, no, because we even talked about this last night. He's like, I have no issue, because sometimes men have issues when their wives are strong leaders. And he is so humble and so supportive of it. And he's like, you go get it. But there's a lot of people that are like, wait, you're a pastor? Yeah. Yeah, I am. And so in some denominations, women aren't allowed to be a leader. My church does a very phenomenal job of embracing that and encouraging us and giving me, because there's another female pastor on staff, and giving us platforms. So me being a woman and then being the pastor's daughter, and especially when I was single, it was a lot harder. People didn't necessarily see me as someone who had value or things to say, like, oh, you're just here, like, you're a young single woman that just got to, right? But, so it's, I know, that's so, but it's gotten better.
Yeah. Well, good.
People trust me more. This is kind of sad to say, that trust me more that I'm married now, which is weird, or like see me more as like a leader. Oh, she's married, she's, you know, but it's taken me a little bit to prove myself in every leadership role, male, female. It takes a while to prove yourself as a leader. It does. Sometimes for women, it takes a little bit longer. And then also as a woman, I've had to learn, I don't think this is necessarily fair, but I've had to learn how I speak to people and how I lead people. You could say something, hey, I need you to do X, Y, Z, whatever. Oh, John's a great leader. Wow, I got it. I could say the very same thing, and it's whoa. You're don't be. And so I've had to learn, that's not necessarily fair, but I've had to learn how I speak to people. So it's that balance. I've had to learn how I speak to people and how I lead, because in society, sometimes strong women are seen as in a negative light.
Sure. So being clear and direct is an asset in leadership, but as a female, sometimes that can be misunderstood.
Completely. And so that's, as a society and culture, we need to make more awareness of, no, women are gifted and strong, and that's good, and we need to embrace that. But also as a woman, unfortunately, because some of that's out there, I have to be intentional how I speak and how I lead. And I have leaders that now, I have some leaders that have been with me for 7 years leading my ministry. So now I could look at them and be like, hey, Chris, I need you to do X, Y, Z. Got it. But I've had to, and again, that's in any leadership, but more, I've had to learn to be intentional with my words. Does that make sense? So,
we have a mutual friend, Jenny Simmons.
Yes.
And working with her and knowing her, I grew up. I was an elementary teacher, so I was around great female leaders all the time. So I kind of swam in that pool. My mom's a professional. So I'd kind of swam in that water, and then wanting to get into teaching was what I always. So I've always swam in that pool, but I call it the velvet hammer. Like you have to. You're as a leader, you're kind of a hammer,
right?
But you got to have that velvet touch sometimes.
You do. Yep. Absolutely. Yep. And women, unfortunately, sometimes a little bit more so. Yeah. But I mean, I'm not going to sit here and woe is me, and you know what I mean? Like, hey, you know what? Just move on.
Yep. Where did that come from? I mean, is that something that do you give all that credit to, to your creator? Do you give that to your dad, your mom? I mean, where did you come up with that just very mature, what I would say, well, just balanced view of that? I mean, where did you come up with that? We're going in the deep end of the pool.
I love it. Okay. I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm just trying to, where did I come up with that? I think that's Jesus, because it's so easy to sit there in any context, not just leadership or me being, oh, woe is me, I'm a female and people don't, whatever. What is that going to do? You know what I mean? And I'm not going to sit there and play the victim or whatever, because if I rest in that, then that's all I'm ever going to think about and cap myself at. Well, people don't see me as a leader, so I'm not going to buy into that. And it's just, I have to remind myself, no, I'm called to this, and the things that I have to offer, they have value. And I do have people, my dad, my pastor, that encourages me and puts me in positions to lead. I have people. We have a superintendent and a district youth director that oversee our state, and so our district youth director oversees all the youth ministries in our state, and I'm on that leadership team, and there's a handful and stuff, and so I have people that have put me in places of leadership, but it's taken a little bit of time. But and so I just, people do see the value in that. Or I have an amazing husband that encourages me, like today, because like I said, there's some men that would be like, oh, like when women, they have strong women or leadership, they can't handle it. But he is such an encouragement to me that it's like, no, I can do this. And so I just have to constantly let that go, because people are always going to have issues with everything. Let that go. Don't feed into it, and just keep going with what God's called me to. Does that make sense?
Hey, that's a great insight. I think there's people watching probably that are like, okay, that helps me, because that helps me too.
That's in any situation.
Yeah, right. That's good. That's just good perspective on life, because there are so many things that are out of your control. Right. You can't control what somebody else thinks about you, says about you.
No.
You really can't. You have to stay true to who you are.
Right.
And how you've been gifted.
It's not always easy. There's a lot of mind games in life, in ministry, especially a lot of mind games. And you can either sit there and feed them, or you can say, you know what? No, I'm not gonna feed that. I'm just gonna keep going with what God's called me to.
Well, this is great. This has been a great. We're just getting started, but what now? For those people who are listening, parents, you're obviously work with students on a regular basis.
Yes.
What would you say to parents that are watching this that have little humans at home like you, that one day are going to become slightly larger humans, what we have come to know as middle high, senior high? What would you tell parents of little ones right now that could help them down the road, maybe make life a little bit more, little easier to handle? What would you feed in now as a pastor that you could see fruit down the road?
Be present. Not just we're sitting next to each other on our phone, but present with you. I see you. Let's talk. Another one, I grew up where it was like we would all wrestle with questions, and instead of listening and hearing and answering the why, it was well, this is the way that it is, and you learn that as a toddler. We don't do that. That's hot. We don't do that, right? But really kind of starting to unpack the why, and you can do that at a young age. But why don't we do that? Well, we're people who respect one another. We respect authority. We respect whatever. But I would say, gosh, being present, because the reality is, me as a youth pastor, I'm with, once they get up high school, middle school, high school, I'm only with them, an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours a week. But parents are with them. Yeah, they go to school and go to work, but they're the biggest influence on their kids' life. And so being present and having conversations and talking, being present is so big. I had another one, and I just forgot it, and it was going to be really good, maybe. But being present is huge.
Yeah.
It's huge.
That's good. I think the role of parents is obviously now you're entering that season of experience that firsthand.
Right.
You've been a child, you've been a pastor. Right. Now you're being a parent.
Right.
I appreciate that. Let's share a little bit about the community of Brandon. Brandon Valley Assembly of God has always been for 31 years been kind of a beacon in some ways as a church. You've opened up your physical space to lots of different activities. Mm-hmm. I mean, I always feel like there's always something happening at your church.
Right. Right.
And that's, of course, I think just a cool thing. What do you believe, or what do you think a community wellness center in Brandon, in Aspen Park, what do you think that could mean to a community like Brandon as we're growing? And because I'm guessing you guys, there's a lot of things that happen at your church, mm-hmm. but not everything can happen there.
No.
Is there a need for something like that in Brandon, do you think?
To be honest, I've never really thought about it. But right now, it's like what I see coming out of that is a unity aspect. That if we had a community wellness center, there are a lot of things that we could host there. I think one of the things in our area is that it's really easy to get territorial of this church and this church, my students, this group, they go to my church and whatever. And I get that. It's so easy to fall into that trap. But realizing, no, we're a community that all works together. And I think the benefit of doing a community wellness center is, no, doesn't matter who's behind it, who's running it, but man, we are here for the community, for this next gen.
Right.
That's, I think, what would matter. And I think if people looked at it in that way, I think it could be crucial. Crucial.
Yeah, because I look at it, and we all have our, one of our guests talked about it as like micro communities. We all have our micro communities where we live, where we worship, where we, get our gasoline,
Casey's.
Casey's. I get my gas at Casey's, and free shout out.
Right.
No, this isn't a free shout out, Casey's. If you're listening, this is all Casey's water, by the way.
It is.
So I feel like Casey owes us something here. So not you, Casey, the other one.
There we go.
But yeah, I mean, those are all my peeps are like.
Right.
And but that macro, like what we have with our school district, there's a macro element. We're all links. Mm-hmm. But how about those folks that are from the older generation, the younger generation, and maybe who don't have how do we embrace all that within our city, within our community? And for me, I think we do have to do, as a unity piece, in order to be unified, we have to be together and in conversations. Like you and I having this conversation right now is important.
Yes. Because
we serve, obviously, this same community, same area, same people, and that's, I think, as your perspective on it is important to me because, you work with a lot of people. You do a lot of activities. We're doing some things I know this fall together that are really important.
When it comes to Gen Z, which is the middle school and high school, Gen Z has the highest level of anxiety, depression that we've ever seen in any generation. And we are in a mental health crisis. And even talking to Mr. Schleckaway, the high school principal, he said, anything that we can do for mental health, let's do it, because that's our biggest need. And Terrence Talley hits that right there. Everybody belongs. He does this thing called dad hugs, where he's like, everybody needs a dad hug, right? That there's something about when your dad hugs you, right? You feel good, you feel protected. It's security, right? And so he speaks a lot to those things. And right now, again, in Gen Z, it's crucial. It's crucial because we're at a mental health crisis, really.
Well, that's great because I know that's such an important topic with that touches all of our lives.
Yes.
And championing the dad. I like that dad hug. That's kind of right in my sweet spot. Dad hugs, yeah. Yeah. We need to deputize some more dad huggers.
Well, and I feel like I could keep going off, but this generation too, like I'm a millennial, and so a little bit me, but more so the upper generations, they used to live in what they call an apple pie America, where you had the dad, the mom, you go to church on Sundays, mom stays home, dad goes to work. Like it was very apple pie, right, America. But now we see in Gen Z that the majority of Gen Zers don't have that dad and mom in a household. We have a lot of single parents, divorced parents, split homes, you name it. And I'm not dogging on any of that, but what I'm saying is it's no longer apple pie America. And so then, or that mom and dad figure. And so then when Terrence comes in, it's like, hey, I'm going to give a dad hug. There's a lot of students, a lot of Gen Zers that don't have a dad, don't have a mom or whatever. So I could go on. I'm so passionate about this, and because it's so crucial, but so it's important. So I'm super excited for Terrence, and yeah.
Well, Casey, unfortunately, we have to. We're gonna have to make it kind of end of this conversation, but we're gonna revisit this, and we'll have you back again. This podcast is the reason we do it is to build community and to build unity. And so my hope is that if you're watching this and you're listening and you think this has been valuable, share it with your people on social media, like it, comment. Those are great ways to get the message out. Obviously, we want to build that in Brandon because, having those familiar faces and those safe people in your life is important, and that happens at school, at church, and if we can help kind of initiate that through a conversation like this, that's great. So go to brandonwellness.com. You can support the vision of a wellness center. You can support the vision of these conversations just by going there. And thanks, Casey. And I know, man, next time I see you, you're sure you're going to stop. We're planning to stop at 3, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
I'm going to talk to Noel.
Oh, he's the one that's more like, no, we're done. I'm good. I'm good.
Well, and that may change by tomorrow. That might change.
Oh, gosh.
All right. Thanks, Casey.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on the Love Your Neighbor podcast. The purpose of the Love Your Neighbor podcast is to build community one conversation at a time. You can help us build that community by sharing the podcast on your social media channels and rating our podcast on whatever platform you're listening from. Another way is to let us know of any neighbors who have a story. Go Leaks!